Previously, Cheri led workforce development and training for 1,400 clean energy employees at Tesla's solar plant in Buffalo, New York, and battery factory in Nevada. It's so interesting when I speak to people within the indigenous community that there's just kind of this linkage through time to the earth and being stewards of this planet, which seems like such a refreshing message as we're, kind of catapulting towards catastrophe in a sense. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, indigenous civilizations have been the original stewards of Earth, and colonization sort of stripped that knowledge away from all of us. And getting back to those Aboriginal ways of living and understanding and being one with the earth and being equal with plants and animals, that's a native concept. Dominating nature is a colonial concept. And so it's interesting that in order to fix this problem and to halt or slow at least climate change, we have to go back to behaving and thinking in those ways.
Tribal lands, though, there have been people who've come in and extracted. I mean, you've seen this. Can you talk a little bit about that? And what inspired you to kind of on your road that you're on now?
Well, that's actually a great question. I was inspired after, I'm an indigenous descendant of the Mi'kmaq Nation of so-called Maine and the Canadian Maritimes. I didn't grow up on a reserve. My European side was the most prevalent culture in my upbringing. And it wasn't until later in my career that I was introduced to tribes in the plain states of our country, where fossil resources are plenty. And I met a small tribe there that, despite the promised riches of the coal beneath their feet, refused to mine it or extract it and uphold their sacred covenants to protect and preserve the earth. And they inspired me. And so they wanted a path forward. They were saying no to coal for so long. They were looking for something to say yes to. And I was at Solar City, and which we became Tesla after. And I said to our leaders, if not us, who? We're 34% market share. We can show this tribe a way forward that is in line with native ethos and lifeways.
Talk to me about the clean energy journey, because it seems like there's still this resistance to shift the way we kind of lead our lives.
Clean energy in general, yeah, because until recently it was a concept and not a viable market, and now that solar anyway is the cheapest form of electricity generation in the world, people are paying attention, and tribes are recognizing that this is a way that they can engage in the markets of renewable energy and sell power. The tribal lands account for the majority of what's left in our country that's large enough for utility scale solar and wind. So that makes it very attractive, not only for tribes, but for outside developers that might want to partner with tribes to build clean energy.
Can I ask you about your job, your role, and the pressures of that, in the sense that I've read, Jackie Robinson talking about, it wasn't just being a baseball player, he was representing a race, and Barack Obama as president had to represent a group of people. You're a representative of indigenous people. Is there a pressure that comes with that?
Yeah, I take that exact topic very seriously. I am a European indigenous blended person, and this is for that reason that my team is 80+% indigenous, and I don't represent the voice of indigenous people. I represent what my ancestors called eduaptamumk, which is literally translated two-eyed seeing, being able to see the value in indigenous wisdom and life ways and ways of being, and Western technology and its ability to solve these problems. So it's my indigenous team that is out in front, that meets first with the tribes. And so we're very careful about that.
We're going to have all these Apec ministers here. They're only here for a short period of time. They leave. Is there a message that you hope they leave with from you and others?
Well, we're honored that both of our Chinese and American heads of state are here communicating at this summit. And we were very grateful to have the opportunity to convene, as I said earlier, with leaders from other countries who are like-minded. And we all realize, being here together, we are we have the same challenges, and that there's strength in numbers and a sharing of wisdom and lessons learned and best practices. And so we're hoping that from this convening comes a coalition of sorts of indigenous communities across the globe working specifically on a just transition.
Talk about those conversations. I mean, what are some of the takeaways that you've had so far that give you some encouragement as you leave San Francisco?
Well, oftentimes the issue with indigenous communities in the United States, we're sovereign nations. It's a little bit different than other parts of the world where tribes are just, they're like every other citizen. But overall, we realize that there's an opportunity to demand a seat at the table where decisions are being made. And if there's no seat at that table, we're going to build the table and we're going to invite y'all to it. So that strength in understanding that this is kind of the challenges are similar around the world is very encouraging, and we can draw on each other and support one another.
What are some of the opportunities you see for tribes out there?
Right. Well, this point in time represents a tremendous opportunity to take back from centuries of oppression in any country, to take some help and build an infrastructure using federal funding, government funding, state funding, whatever it may be called, to build a foundation on which new economies can grow. Because clean energy represents energy in general represents a very powerful place to intervene in broken systems. And when you introduce clean regenerative energy into fossil fueled economies, and these jobs are place-based and they're in line with indigenous ethos, it's a beautiful thing. It brings hope.
Speaking of hope, it seems as though when we think about climate change, it seems like this oncoming train, we're kind of basically on the tracks, roped in there, can't get free. It just seems so dire, all the reporting. So you're out there, and I mean, you know the truth. How do you keep that positive step forward each day, given just how dire things seem to be?
During the discussion yesterday, we talked about, is the earth a mess or is the earth messy? And the earth is just messy. And can we clean it up in time? Can we get our stuff together in time to make a difference for my children, your children, our children's children? I believe we can, but it's going to take some egos being put on a shelf, and it's going to take our governments to stop bowing to capitalism. Which
is quite a task. I mean, that's part of the mess piece of it, isn't it? And so, final thoughts as we wrap up this interview. What's the tipping point where we move from messy to mess? Are we getting closer to it? And how do we avoid it?
Continued investment by our governments is essential, because the wealth in the world was built largely because of fossil extraction. And so it's going to take that level of investment, but much, much faster. And I believe that we can halt it.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I know it's been a busy week for you, and it continues to be a busy time.
Thank you,
Keep
Mike.
fighting the good fight, as they say.
We will. Thanks so much for having me.